Okay, wrapping up Chapter 9 is our last section, Section 8, which discusses language development and literacy. So, how we learn language and how we learn um, how to use language in this period of middle childhood. Now, if we look at a few statistics, let's look at vocabulary and grammar first. By age 6, the average child knows about 10,000 words or has a vocabulary of 10,000 words. A few years later, between 7 and 9, children start to realize words can have different meanings. What we mean here by semantic sophistication. They start to enjoy riddles, jokes, things that have puns, things like that. Um, they start to be able to use the passive voice. Things like the truck was hit by a car, and not only understand it, but be able to form sentences and thoughts in passive voice. And they start to use what are called connectives or conjunctions. For example, they things like "I'll eat my spinach, but I don't want to." The "but" there is a connective or conjunctive. So how to form a single thought out of two distinct, separate thoughts. Now, when we learn to read, reading is something that happens typically during this stage, and typically. When we're in school, we're taught one of two ways to learn to read. One is simple word recognition. So words are presented to us, or visual stimuli, with sound combinations that produce spoken words. So basically, simply, word recognition is learning to read through a repeated exposure to words. So we essentially are memorizing words and how to say them, how they sound, what they mean. The second method is phonetic, in which, so if you've ever heard someone say, well, sound it out, that's where we learn to decode the sounds of words based on how we know letters and sound combinations to sound, and word combinations, or I'm sorry, letter combinations to sound, so that we begin to learn. F sounds like f, and A sounds like ah, and st sounds like st, and we put them all together, and then that word is fast. So that's kind of a phonetic method. Now, sometimes works, particularly with English, can be tricky because not all letters combinations make the sound every time. If you think about the word tough, Tough, and you think about the word through, Through, those words don't sound alike, even though they both have the OUGH combination, one that sounds like ooh and one that sounds like uff. So phonetic, the method doesn't always work, particularly with English. And then some English words we read only by recognition. So this method's such as the words one and two. We recognize words that we use a lot, like our own name. We recognize words very quickly without even having to read them. We just know them by sight. Things like stop, poison, danger. And then lastly, in this section, we talk about bilingualism, perspectives on the world. Now you can see here, languages in our table, languages other than English most often spoken in the home in the U.S. Spanish is at the top of that list with over 28 million homes. And the English-speaking ability of in the home as well. And you can see Spanish again tops that, with English spoken very well along with Spanish. So approximately 50 million Americans speak a different language than English at home. It used to be thought that having a child learn two languages or being in a bilingual environment delayed cognitive development. And that was the idea that there was a limit to our cognitive capacity, and so that two language systems was basically too much, was beyond our capabilities. But that's not true. Not true at all. That is not. Generally, there are no difficulties, academic difficulties, when children are um, exposed to one language in the home and one language at school. It may be a difference in the vocabulary presented at home versus presented at school. If there are any academic challenges, it could be that there's a mixing of the languages, but generally, kids can accommodate two separate languages or adapt to them fairly early age. Um, Bilingualism actually contributes to the complexity of a child's cognitive processes. Um, and so it's not a problem at all, and actually can be um, quite of a benefit to children.